State Representative Darisha Parker represents Pennsylvania's 198th Legislative District and is Vice Chair of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus. She joins us on this recent episode of Decision Makers. Thank you for joining us, Representative, as always.
It's always great and a pleasure to join you, Charles. You always give me a breath of fresh air that just because everybody who's my color is not my kind, but you always make sure that I'm pushing even harder for what Black people should be doing in a time where it's intentional that our Blackness is erased. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. All right. So you've talked a lot recently about impasse in Harrisburg, about, for example, being forced to stay over legislative battles as you're going back and forth between your district and Harrisburg. So explain that.
Sure. I think for me, this past year has wakened me up in ways and challenged me in ways that I know when I say I need to do better, it's not about doing better. It's actually what is the plan going to involve. So my focus and in my plan is quality of life. And what does that mean? Quality of life does not mean because your street is dirty that I have to call the city of Philadelphia to come clean your street. Quality of life is that we're organized as a block with representatives that want to constantly keep the neighborhood clean on a biweekly or monthly basis as an organized manner to get rid of individuals. And I know some people, it's not going to be popular and people are not going to like some of the things that I'm saying. But as far as when I go drive through certain sections, and even when I drive through the suburbs, people aren't selling things on corners. They're not selling food. They're not selling various items. So this whole type of quality of life, what does that actually look like? And what can that be? And I just feel for me, I just need a different quality of life that consists of a certain type of cleanliness in our neighborhood.
When you talk, I'm real curious to get, and I'm ready to get a little bit deeper into that. When you say, like, what aspects of quality of life? So clean streets, you mentioned that as one. So
another quality of life, getting rid of abandoned cars, which also brings in a certain element of drugs, of criminal activities and thefts. If you have a neighborhood that just keeps having a type of blight, abandoned cars, abandoned buildings, individuals selling certain items, that brings in a certain unmentionable into your neighborhood, which ultimately people don't want to move here. I want to see more sale signs in my district as far as homes are for sale, because that means the income is going well. That means that people are trying to move in versus people are trying to move out. So if they're getting higher offers for their home, that means as a community, we're doing better. But I think there's a lot of teaching that we have to do. And I feel that the dumbing down of how things are being replaced with robotics and all of this electronics, it's taking away social graces, and people do not know how to be human and friendly to each other, because every time you're in a car or you're in your house and you're looking, everybody's head is down because we're on their phones. And I think that is the death of a lot of us as a person and the people, because it's the lack of social skills.
Do your priorities, what you're just talking about now, those quality of life priorities and things that, generally speaking, a lot of residents won't talk about, it's there, it's in front of them, but they don't talk about it as a public policy priority or as part of a public policy agenda. Are your priorities, what you're talking about here, is that in sync with the cities, with policymakers such as the mayor, such as the city council? Are you all kind of talking about that? Or do even if you're not talking about it to each other, are you on the same page about it, or do you influence one another in terms of what's happening there?
I think it's talked about ad nauseum at times. And what ends up happening is they always look at us to be the bank as far as the ATM to fund it. And I don't have a problem with it, but it needs to be instilled in neighbors, and neighborhoods across the zip codes. Because, prime example, I represent parts of East and West Oak Lane, Allen, Nicetown, Logan, and Germantown. And every zip code, as far as how the neighborhood looks, is extremely different. And I just need the same attitude that they had in Chestnut Hill, East and West Mount Airy, Society Hill, Center City, and Rittenhouse Square. I need that to be facilitated in our zip codes. But the problem is the incomes aren't there. The levels of voter participation is not there right now. So I just think for as a unit and as a group of people, one of the things that I'm seeing is missing is everyone is pushing everything to social media, and it's not advertised in television, on a television or radio or newspapers. And if we just put those things out there, in addition to sending it to people's home, then maybe we would have a collective of neighbors participating, and our numbers would not be so abysmal as it relates to voter participation. It's bigger than a person registering to vote. They have to participate, they have to activate, and they have to actually vote, because the non-participating of voting shows in what the type of resources. And if I was that type of gloom and doom politician, then there would be less people that would get services because they don't vote. That's not my job to hold that over their head, but it's also my job to educate them as far as the structure of civics and what does the whole definition of politics mean. By its definition, it's a system in which scarce resources is allocated. In other words, who gets what. And I think we need to start showing individuals in various neighborhoods that we could get a lot more if we're organized and if we just participate in various things.
Well, yeah, I remember you saying at one point, we were having another conversation when you were saying that you need constituents to be at those town halls on a regular basis, whether there's
Yes.
vacancy or not. So what I'm hearing you saying right here is that constituents not as educated or informed as they need to be on issues or problems that are taking place in Harrisburg, budget issues between the state and the city, et cetera. You know, what's causing? Well, I know you said social media, lack of advertising. Do you need help from local officials, or local officials giving you that kind of backup and informing their constituents or informing?
Absolutely. We just have a greater reach, and everything that I'm doing. So, prime example, for me to do a robocall, it has to be a legislative. It has to be a legislative initiative in order for me just to do a robocall, and it has to be an event and something attached to it to be a robocall. I don't. I just sent out a. Where is it? Oh, right here. I just sent out a newsletter. Talks about, let's take it from the block to the ballot. I would love to join and or your neighbors to talk about civics and the power of community engagement. I have grant opportunities on here. I had talking about small business owners. So, people are inundated with information on here. Now, the question is, what do they do with the information that we're inundating them? And I would love to understand what happened. We used to have a very engaged, a very informed, a very active neighborhood in various neighborhoods. I think people are just they lost their sense of hope and faith in either political process, and are very angry that they're thinking that we are out here every time they turn around, all they see is politicians throwing parties and events, and they don't think it's for them. So I just said I wanted to do things beyond a party, and I want to have people understand that we could do a lot together, and it's not the politician to demonstrate the policy. It's the individual or the organization to drive it, and then we, the lawmakers, pass it. That's truly what it is, but it has to be advocating, and advocating is not a line item in a budget for it to pass. Advocacy is really doing the main work to change the public policy that's really harmful for Black Americans. Prime example, I don't want to be known as one of the largest poorest city in America, being number 2. I want those numbers to be decreasing, that to eventually we're the 10th or we're not even on that list anymore. But, I don't hear those plans driving that's going to change and erase poverty. That is my focus.
You talk about quality of life, and
Yes.
are those the issues that when constituents think about what they're faced with, the struggles they're faced with, are those the issues that are on their mind, or
Yes.
are they in another headspace?
No, they're in a big headspace when it talks about quality of life. And I just think because guess what? Gas is high, food is high,
Mm-hmm.
utilities is high. So they're just inundated with there's so many things that's hitting their brains before they go out the front door. If I park my car facing another car, I'm gonna get a $30 ticket. If I drive excessive over 25 miles per hour on Broad Street, I'm gonna get a speeding ticket. So African Americans, just the ones that I've been speaking to, just feel that it's been a racially targeted attack against their quality of life. And I push back and say, listen, you've had an 8-year government that has not enforced any laws on the books. Now you have an active government that's enforcing the laws that are on the book. And the things that you're doing are breaking the law. I was talking to a constituent and they were upset that I think it was either the police or parking authority took their orange cones. I said, wait a minute. It's 80 to 100 degrees outside. Why do y'all have orange cones in front of your house? Oh, so when people are at such and such and they come and park in front of my house. I said, that's not your parking space. It's a public street. Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, no. I said, yes. I said, there is no reserve parking. So again, to what you're talking about as far as quality life, people and residents don't feel that they're getting the best of the money for their buck because, our property taxes and assessments are going up again. And folks don't think that they're getting the best. But I don't think folks are contributing as far as participating in a lot of this process. And they complain, but what do you want to do to see it change?
Impasse in Harrisburg.
Yes.
The legislature, the largest full-time legislative body in the country.
One of, yes.
Yes, it was. You've got salaries that are adjusted to annual cost of living, travel reimbursements, pensions, etc. So you're in a somewhat envious position compared to.
Yeah, I mean, when you have 9 other states that are full-time positions, and we are in the top 5 as far as salaries, nobody's going to have sympathy towards me or what I do. But I also push back and tell everybody, but I run every 2 years. I don't have a bigger staff as compared to city council that runs every 4 years. Mm-hmm. And my office is almost 2 hours away in Harrisburg. So I just have to break everything down in that manner to say that, you can't compare to what I do to city council because city council is in Philadelphia. It takes them 15 to 20 minutes to get to their offices. It could take me 2 hours. So I try to give people the balance. And when I'm having these conversations now, Charles, everything is like, oh, well, Red Parker can afford that. Oh, well, we could just do this. How do you know what I can afford? Like people really think a certain amount of income makes me wealthy. I am not wealthy. I'm working just like everybody else. And I'm doing the people's business as a public servant. And that is not anything to be glorified as. But I just think you guys should be looking at, and I don't mention him often, but your president is getting extremely wealthy. He's trying to, roll out this other currency so he can make more money in public office. And that's not what public office was ever designed for. It was supposed to be the people's house and the people's business. It wasn't for any of us to be wealthy while we're in office.
And, while you're looking at that impasse, with some experts who are pointing out that, this past session, yet another session where really substantive pieces of policy passed, a lot of name bills, the naming of things like post offices, et cetera. So the budget was weeks late. Talk about what explains all of
that. So the main thing about this year's budget, which if you listen to the school district of Philadelphia, is interesting because I know they recently took out another loan. But for some of the majority of the nonprofits and other entities, none of them had to take out a loan or miss payroll due to when our budget has passed. And I just think that because it was so late the previous year, that folks just can't, they just put that much pressure on us that they just could not afford to be in that much in the red, because the children who are supposed to be adults on the other side of the aisle couldn't get their acts together. And when I keep saying get their acts together, we still don't have minimum wage. We still don't have the passing of recreational marijuana. We still have not regulated skill games. And Pennsylvania is one of the fastest growing states for older and aging adults, because we have not raised our taxes for that population of individuals. So those individuals can afford to live here versus other states. So, I mean, are there some things in the budget that I want to see down the pike that I'm going to be pushing harder for? Absolutely. The main thing is I want to make sure that African Americans, and I'm unapologetic about the African Americans business owners. I want them to be doing well. I want them to be soaring as far as resources and access. I want us to be able to grow and say out of Pennsylvania that we were able to have millionaires and billionaires based on the industry that they're involved in, and that I want to see more African Americans start their own businesses, especially in the era of growing their own crops and farms, considering a lot of things that's happening now, and they're going after some of these food districts, and everything you're hearing has been negative. So, I mean, are there things in this budget that can be improved? Absolutely. But we're still contributing the record-breaking numbers to Philadelphia School District. I do believe mass transit eventually has to still be funded. And overall, it's a budget. I mean, I wrestle every year as far as if I'm going to vote for the budget, because I always feel that as a people, Black people, we don't get our share, because sometimes we don't even understand what we're supposed to be asking. And it's my job, until people don't want me to go and continue to fight for them anymore. But as long as I'm their state representative, I'm going to be unapologetic to make sure that the blacks in the 198th and beyond not just have their table, but are able to own it, build it, and pass it on to the generations behind them.
A razor thin margin in terms of the partisan composition of the Pennsylvania legislature. And so the polarization there is really obvious, especially when it's such a big state, urban, suburban, exurban, rural interest, everything.
Yes.
So despite all of that,
I mean, and we're still, to your point, Charles, a lot of people forget we're still a one-seat majority. And there's only but so much you can do with a one-seat majority. You can be creative as you want. Like, guess what? As being a one-seat majority, everything that I'm asking for, absolutely, I'm going to get out of the House. It's just, is it going to make that U-turn and come out of the Senate? We are teed up that there's a couple of seats that we potentially will be able to flip in. We're gaining more seats in the House, and there's potentially more seats that we can flip in the Senate. And then it's going to be, then we should be talking in a different type of kind of conversation, because, we are the trifecta. So that's why your skin can look great the way you look, and you can smile, because you live in Maryland. And Maryland, you guys have the trifecta. You have the governor, you have the House and the Senate. So you should not, you don't have to worry about anything, and neither does New York. So when you have that trifecta, it's a different conversation.
And despite all that, what about the bipartisanship?
Sure.
Is that there, trying to form relationships across the aisle? How does someone like you do that?
I've done it. I mean, I've done it from day one when our House Republicans were in the majority, and now they're in the minority. So the relationships that I have not changed. I just feel that it's just more polarized because Caucasians, I'm seeing that I work with, are more emboldened because of the orders that have been given to them from Donald Trump, and they feel they have something to prove. So the crazies that we work with in the Republican Party are that bold and emboldened, but we got some wild ones in the Democratic Party too. So I just think that it never used to be a time that it was just this heavily partisan. I just want to get back to the time that we were about people. And when are we going to just get to the people's business and making sure that they can take care of themselves?
And I'm real curious too, Darisha. Pennsylvania being right.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will joke that you go to the other side, like the western part of the state,
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky,
Yeah.
things of that sort, and just different composition, different ways
Mm-hmm.
things. It was really, really fascinating is to watch all across the country the debate over things like data centers. It seems like
Oh.
everyone's on the same page about that. Talk about that, those issues where everybody seems to be on the same page about, including data centers, because, there's so much, there are parts of the state where there's big open space. I'm sure, technology companies, big tech, looking
Mm-hmm.
at using those spaces for data centers, but there's
Mm-hmm.
so much vitriolic conversation and debate around that.
Well, it's always going to be conversation and debate around a conversation that people aren't privy and don't really understand what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing more and trying to understand more about it. But guess what? They're here. They're gonna be here. So
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean for the Black and Brown community? What does that mean for individuals? Are you involved with the union? Are you getting trade? Are you getting your skill set up to par so that you can be a participant in this process? Because it's going to be here and it's going to be affecting all of our lives. What does that also mean to our ratepayers? Does that mean our electric bills are going up? What does the board make up?
Mm-hmm.
So I just think with these data centers, guess what? People don't even talk about the economic impact. Why? Because there's so many jobs. Because data centers don't go up in 90 days. They're like a 3 to 4 year project. So it's just like, what does that skill set look like, and what is the economics that's going to benefit that community? And you have a lot of people who are really against it. I know there was a moratorium in New York as it relates to these data centers. And I see, Mandami is doing a lot of, creative and a lot of bold things. And I said, yeah, he's a first term mayor who hasn't finished his first year yet. So it does look like he's doing a lot of miraculous things. But what happens in New York doesn't mean it's going to dictate or trickle down to Philadelphia.
I'm calling with Representative Darisha Parker. Thanks again. Really appreciate your time as always. That wraps this episode. I'm Charles Ellison, your executive producer and host. A warm round of gratitude to our partner, the Council on Communities of Color at the Council of State Governments Eastern Region. You can find this episode and more others while you're subscribing, of course, to the bnote.com. Thanks for watching. Everyone stay safe out there.